and I hear me. So we're good to go.
That's all
And
we
I'll
need.
hand it
That's
back to
all we
you,
need to
Judge.
do is to hear you. Over to you, Doug, and we can get going.
Okay, I'm going to read the topic and key lesson, and then I'll hand it over to Guy. Topic today is use your struggle with life to liberate yourself from yourself. And the key lesson reads, the present moment and our awareness of whatever may be passing into and through it are one consciousness, much in the same way as the eye of the beholder shares an awareness of both the mirror and the object it reflects. All right, Guy, I'll see you after your talk.
Thank you, Doug. Welcome, everyone. Wherever you are, I suppose whatever day or time it is that you're joining in on this conversation that we're going to have together. My intention is to help bridge some specific ideas. And when I say bridge ideas, I don't want you to start thinking that suddenly you're going to have to do any deep thinking. I mean, I'm going to pull out of the shadows, as it were, some of the things that are right in front of us all the time that we can't see. And if you have done your spiritual work, you know the moments where change takes place in your life is when all of a sudden you're able to see and understand something about yourself and about the relationships that yourself has formulated over time, and you see something new. Everything rests in that. So one of the things to set the stage that I want to discuss with you is that there are two inescapable facts about our life. One, they are an endless struggle. There's always something going on, pulling on the mind, tugging on the heart, if not debilitating the body, that commands our attention. And it might be a steady, dull drone in the back of the mind, just thoughts rolling on as they've done, trying to reconcile something from the past or find a way to struggle through the moment so what we call the future works to be the way we want it. Or that struggle is dynamic in terms of someone just said something, something didn't go the way we want it to go. We fall down socially, financially, and then it's on. So that's the first thing, just this struggle. And the second fact of the struggle is that not one of the struggles that we have entered into throughout this life, whatever our age may be, has brought an end to the moment where there's a knock at the door and something else has taken place that requires us getting back into it and struggling to restore what we call our freedom. Now, if those two facts are at least somewhat clear to you, then I'm assuming the reason that you join me for the talks that I give is because you understand at some point a person is going to have to come to this realization that the freedom that we seek or that we feel has been taken from us in the onset of these conflicting conditions. Freedom has nothing to do with overcoming the conditions that we blame our pain on. We keep thinking there'll be an end to this struggle. I get through today, I figure out what to do with my mother, my father, my family, my friends, my finances, my health. And if we're honest, they line up like bees in front of a flower waiting to dip their proboscis in and take some pollen from it. There's always something waiting in the wings telling us that there's something else we're going to have to get in and mix it up and overcome whatever it is that we have yet to overcome for all of our struggles. And here's the point of this opening. At some point, a man or a woman, to whatever extent they're capable of doing, has to realize that what we have to overcome is not the conditions we blame our struggles on, but rather we have to come to a place where, if you want to use the words, we overcome a certain order of consciousness that feels that it is apart from every moment it's in, and because it's apart from the moment, has to figure out how to get its part out of it that it wants, or get rid of the part of it it doesn't want. So that freedom is always something that's tenuous for us. I want to talk about, and will talk until I drop this body, about another kind of freedom that isn't tenuous at all. That doesn't require people say and do the things that we want. That doesn't require we wake up and look good or wake up feel right. All of that superfluous circumstance becomes secondary to a human being who has begun to understand the real task, if you want to use the words, the real struggle, as is hinted at through every true religious or spiritual teaching. Not the nonsensical, psychopathic teachings, not what they've done to the proper ideas inherent in Scripture, but rather to start to understand that what is my struggle other than something's happened, something's interfering with what I want, with who I imagine myself to be. And somehow or other, I've got to get all of that out of the way. Somehow it has to go on. I have to go on. At least clinging to the idea that if I can struggle through this moment, if I can get you to be who I need you to be, then something of my pain will be mitigated, and then I can get back to my life, so to speak, as it is. But what is my life? This is where the spiritual rubber meets the road. At a certain point, to realize there is something that this consciousness is deeply involved in, or more accurately, that I am deeply immersed in, enmeshed in, that under all circumstances insists that nothing disturb it, and that if anything comes along to rock the boat, then there's the struggle to get the ballast in the bottom of the boat right, so that the ship is right again and we can go on sailing towards what? Sailing towards the next time, the next moment, the next storm that we know by now always comes along, so that this struggle to ensure this continuation of ourselves as we've imagined ourselves to be is just one long struggle. And the question here at the outset of our time together is, what is the actual nature of this useless struggle? And more importantly, how do I stop this useless struggle when I say to myself, I can't take it anymore, I don't want to go on, this is too difficult, and then I find myself picked up one more time, any unwanted moment. Oh my God, what to do here, or what not to do? Should I say yes, or should I say no? So the choices are part of the struggle. Let that sink in for a moment, so that the choices that I seem to have able to make in that moment that are supposed to bring an end to the struggle, they're not bringing an end to the struggle. They never have. The choices that appear in the moment where the struggle becomes imminent are part of the struggle itself, and part of the consciousness that believes somehow or other one of these choices that I'm going to make is going to free me from whatever the person or the problem or the pain of the moment, and then I can be free again and get on with my life. And so in the first, 10 minutes of this talk, I'm describing to you, if you're willing to be honest, that there have been this endless stream of events, unwanted, the resistance to them, the new choices to be made, and then another struggle to go in to try to get everything to line up the way that I imagine it is, so that I can be free of myself, liberated. And in the end, I'm describing to you what amounts to an endless struggle. And the struggle is to fix what has taken place so as to validate what I have imagined myself to be or that I need to be, so that I'm always in a struggle with what I'm looking at, and when it doesn't match what I want to see, all I know how to do is to struggle with the circumstance and hope to find some modicum of peace because I've mitigated whatever it is that was happening, and that's enough for the opening. This struggle to liberate ourselves is a useless struggle, as long as the struggle is to change the conditions that we find ourselves feeling challenged by. Because by the very nature of feeling challenged by the moments around us, it is directly indicative of the fact that somehow I and what I'm experiencing is other than the conditions I'm facing. And if there's one basic truth an aspirant must understand, is there is no separate self apart from the conditions that elicit that sense of oneself. They are a singularity. So that the struggle to overcome the condition is actually the denial of the awareness of the consciousness responsible for its appearance. And in the end, the struggle, the whole first part of this, the struggle isn't to try to change conditions. The struggle is to be. The struggle is to be a man or a woman who is present enough in the moment where the condition comes along and seems to challenge him or her. The struggle to be awake enough to realize that this moment that seems different because I'm in a different state, I'm in a different country, I'm with different people, when I look at it, if I'm honest, it is exactly the same struggle, the same sense of myself that I don't want, the same hope that I can change that experience and move into one that I do. So we must understand the nature of this struggle, and to understand the nature of this struggle, if we're ever going to have any chance of changing the order of consciousness responsible for it, we need new knowledge. Now, the fact is, the new understanding that we need is never not apart from us. These talks are merely a way in which I help you remember what it is that you've forgotten is true about yourself. And we do that by looking and taking the world around us at its most elementary level and using what I call the common to find the celestial in it. So that gradually, as we begin to recognize, there's no moment that in this world where the natural world, where what? Where something has come along, something that is active, and it has encountered something that is passive. A great big celestial, divine, planetary yes runs into something that arbitrarily says no. And we can see something like this, that there is this constant disturbance between the interaction between active and passive, between something that's saying, yes, this is how it is, and you and I going, no, that's not how it should be, that we can begin to realize in the world, for instance, what is that passage from the New Testament? Or is it, maybe it is New Testament. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow, they toil not, neither do they spin. And yet Solomon in all of his glory was not arrayed like these lilies. Now, what is that passage? What is it saying? It's saying that this lily, the beauty of the lily, is the result of all of the things that act upon the lily, including our part as the observer of that beauty. All of these things acting on the lily are part of what produces the beauty of the lily. So if you can see what I'm saying, here I am, I'll be a lily. I'm a lily. And here comes the sunlight. And the sunlight strikes what is passive in the lily. It requires, the lily requires to take the energy in from the sun and to transform it into something that the lily can use to feed itself and all that's in its relationship. So here's the creature, if you can, and that part of the lily is going, no, I kind of like just being where I am. Everything's okay, pretty much. So sunlight, come back in an hour. Cool it down a little bit. It's a little too hot for me. And you can get this idea that this passive nature that is innate, if you want to use those words, an object at rest wants to stay at rest. Everything that's passive wants to remain undisturbed. And yet this life is about something that is active coming in and disturbing what is passive. So on one side, this lily is going, no, don't disturb me. How about tomorrow? But at the same time, the lily's going, yes, okay, thy will be done. Thy light do what thou willst to me. And it's in the marriage of these forces, of the one part of the lily, the physical part, the creative, the creation. It's going, no, let me just hang out here like I am. But the divine, if you will, the natural life requiring the development of the lily and its species is acting on it and saying, listen, no, you need to take into you what is being given to you so that you can go on and become even more of the lily that you are, serving everything that you serve as you serve what acts on you. So on one hand, the lily's going, no. On the other hand, it's going, okay, all right. I really don't want to be bothered. I really don't want this pain. I don't want to feel this heat. I don't want to go through anything. Nevertheless, thy will be done. And if you're following this simple analogy, then you can understand it is in the union of this yes running into the appropriate no. It is in the union of these forces that a new creature is conceived right within the lily itself. When we look at something beautiful, we don't see something that's alive and being given life even as it lets go of what no longer serves itself. But the fact of the matter is that each moment, each creature is the altar of a new marriage. This is what our minds can't get wrapped around. That we can see it if we can in scale, a leaf, a flower, a branch of a tree, or everything, the altar, meaning the ground in which everything's going to meet, and out of that meeting, out of that union, a new creation, a rebirth. And that rebirth that takes place is because of the relationship between this yes and this no, between this active and this passive. Only in nature, because nature is designed to accept the will of the celestial and planetary forces for the development and reconciliation of all of her creations, it always says yes. You and I, on the other hand, we live in that same world, only enlarged, enhanced by 1 billion-fold. So when something comes along and it says yes, we don't go, thy will be done. I go, no, I don't think so. Something's wrong with you, or you wouldn't be disturbing me. This moment wouldn't be like this if there was a good God. Why would everything be this way? So we, instead of understanding the marriage of this yes and no, of this divinity and this creation that it acts upon, we're in a constant state of, when the moment of yes and no meet, of primarily just saying no, or, listen, allowing that sudden state of resistance to not wanting the will to act on us for the purpose the will has come into this body. Instead, this mind gets busy and it says, no, yes to this and yes to that. No, I won't, but I will do this. This isn't right, but I will become right when I finally get everything worked out according to my idea of who and what I am and what it takes to be a free human being. So as, in essence, human beings asleep to themselves are unable to allow these forces to not just meet, but to do what they are intended to do when they meet in this consciousness, which is to elicit from this consciousness of the opposites, to elicit from the sudden awareness of another life, another order of being. Not just the awareness of my negativity, I don't want to be like that. nor this idea of myself, I'm going to be a spiritual person and accept whatever happens. Because that's all child's play. Because if we can see it, it doesn't matter whether I say yes or no. It's still involving an identity that feels as if it's separate from the moment that has come to that creature to bring about a rebirth of that creature through a new relationship to these forces, to what is divine in nature, to bring about a new creature, a new you, a new me. And we can see, if we're willing to, through the overwhelming evidence, the continuing conflict in our life is filled with, I got to fix this, I got to go there, I got to straighten them out. And it makes no difference what choice we've made. And I said this at the start. It doesn't matter what choice I make. There's going to be another choice and another choice and another choice. And not one of the choices changes the consciousness. Because we're allowing an unconscious nature to make the choices for us, predicated on what it believes and perceives life to be. And all it knows to do is to continue itself regardless the cost, to not only itself and its possibilities, but to the world around it and everyone in it. Okay, 22 minutes in. How are we to understand this? I can see certain things. I know you can. And it doesn't matter how many times I act out or say certain things and then find myself filled with regret and swearing I'll never be like that again. I don't want to be an impatient, angry, greedy, whatever it is. But when the rubber meets the road, the reality is that the way in which that moment that we get through it is by judging ourselves. I shouldn't be like this. If you were that way instead of the way you are, I wouldn't be like this. And it brings about, to make a transition here with you, it brings about the possibility, and one could say without any hesitation whatsoever, that all of that movement, that churning, that burning, every last one of these moments that has remained in place instead of producing a new sense of myself, a new being, they have all served the same purpose that all of us are brought to. And I love, I've mentioned it before, but I guess I have to bring it in again. A long time ago, an old rabbi, Rabbi Hillel, one of the progenitors of some very, very beautiful old teachings, he wrote this down. He said, if I'm not for myself, who will be? That's one side of the equation, isn't it? Because when I look at my life, I'd say I would like to sacrifice a little bit more of myself. I'd like to be a better man or a better woman. But I'll only go so far. Because if I'm not for myself, by God, I'll be a doormat. Well, life will just roll over me if I'm not just for myself. And that mindset of this consciousness is so prominent. It's there every moment of our life. Because it is what weighs the moment and decides whether or not that moment is for me or not. And if it's not for me, I don't want it. But then the rabbi goes on. He says, if I'm not for myself, who will be? And then he captures something. He says, but on the other hand, if I'm just for myself, what in the name of God am I? So I was okay here just for myself. But somehow or other, I can't be like that. I hope to God that you can't be like that. I can't be just for myself. It's all I know. Because if I'm just for myself, what am I? I'm no different than, that's where the expression dog eat dog world comes from. Because that's what dogs do. That's what this beast, that's what these animals, this consciousness, unregenerate, that's what it is. It wants to be the first at the dish. It wants to eat its fill. It wants to growl and bark away anybody that's interfering with its pleasure. And then when it is done, if it has enough, then it has something for others. But by the grace of God, and I pray it's true for you, the question, if I'm just, what am I? I want you to serve me. I want this first. I want that last. What am I? Because I'm the most unpleasant creature in the world when I'm just for myself. Impatient, bitter, complaining, judgmental. So I know for sure that's not good by itself. But the other side of the equation, what am I? It's asking, Guy, whatever your name is, it's asking, what is there that can take place when a person understands, of course, they have to be for themselves. But at the same time that they have to be for themselves, they must ask, what am I when I'm that man or woman who is selfish, dedicated to my own pleasure, irritated at the drop of a hat with anybody that challenges anything that I have assumed needs to be done? What am I? And when you put those two together, you have this glorious moment of, first, yes, I'm for myself, but on the other hand, no, I can't be just for myself. So you have this instant in which, in the consciousness capable of conceiving what I'm describing, where I'm terribly uncomfortable spending my whole life just trying not to be uncomfortable. And because I don't care what I do, what it costs me, as long as I can get rid of the disturbance. And then Hillel goes on, he says, well, if I'm not for myself, who's going to be? But if I'm just for myself, what am I? And then he asks the crowning question, if not now, then when? If not now, then when? Because what he's alluding to here is, I've tried to deny myself. It's excruciating. So that for most of us, what we call denying ourselves, meaning in quotes, being for others, is all predicated on some moral, religious, social image of ourselves as being someone who's for this group or that group. Out of the generosity and the depth of our soul, we're for this. And every last human being who is like that fails to see that the moment I'm for that, I'm against anything that doesn't run in the same stream as it. So suddenly there's no distinction. All that's happened is I'm momentarily identified with yet some other thought, someone else to become, someone new so that I can be when I begin to act out what I've been told I need to act out in order to be a good man or a good woman. So if you're following me, and I know this is difficult, I'm literally between a rock and a hard place. I hate when people complain, don't you? And then instead of actually being kind enough to say or act out whatever is required to let that person know that they can complain till the cows come home, instead of that, we acquiesce. So between yes and no, want and not want, choice, not choice, what is there? And as the rabbi was saying, and if it's not now, then when? So take a deep breath, because I want to show you something. I hope to God you can see it. I'm going to change metaphors slightly, but it is exactly what the rabbi was saying. If I'm not for myself, who will be? If I'm just for myself, what am I? If not now, then when? There is a Native American story. We're going to shed light on it more than we've done in the past. The story goes a young woman, the granddaughter of one of the medicine men or the chief, she goes to her grandfather and says, "I'm very frightened. I'm worried. What's wrong, sweetheart?" She says, "There's two wolves in me. There's two wolves, and one of them is not a good wolf. It's a bad wolf. One of these wolves is bad." And she says, "But I know there's a good wolf in there too. And I don't know what's going to happen in their struggle. Which of these two wolves, meaning what order of consciousness am I going to be a part of and participate in this world as the instrument of? Which wolf, grandfather, is going to win?" And the story goes, and this is what most of us know, the old grandfather says to the young girl, he says, "Well, the one that you feed, sweetheart, that's the one that's going to win, the one you feed." And oh, hallelujah, happy day, I got it. I just have to feed the good wolf. Ha! Piece of cake. But the problem is, I don't even know what the good wolf is apart from the false morality and the conditioned beliefs. And not only do I not know what the good wolf is, I don't understand how is the good wolf fed? By good deeds? By being generous and giving money away? Serving soup and sandwiches someplace? Is that how you feed the good wolf? When you're sitting there and inside of you, the bad wolf is full of resentment or regret or wishing that you didn't have to be there doing, but that's what a good wolf does. So I'm trying to point out this incredible dichotomous relationship that we have with our own consciousness, where on one hand, it's automatic to feed the bad wolf. It's automatic. I don't have to think about it at all. Me first, you next. What I want, as long as I get it, I'll make the adjustments I need to, but what I want, I eat first. That's the bad wolf. And we wouldn't even know, would we, that there actually was that level of consciousness were it not for the grace of the divine. By some distant, almost invisible, unknown light sitting inside of this consciousness. Like Christ said, the light dwells in the darkness. The good dwells in the bad. And the bad doesn't know anything about it. And yet we can be aware of the fact that if it was just me and me only, I wouldn't be troubled by my own nature. I wouldn't have to struggle with my consciousness, my conscience at all. As most of us don't, by the way. Because this conscience, this level is always just justifying itself. So how do I feed the good wolf? This is where we look at something a little bit deep. So there's a bad wolf. And bad wolf simply means, in the same language as in all scriptures, the evil means that which separates me from the divine. That's what is bad. That's what creates a sense of separation and the suffering and the fear and then the demand. That is evil, because not only does it separate me from the divine, but it makes you my enemy unless you're aligned with what I want. So that's a piece of cake. On the other hand, how do I feed the good wolf? And try to understand this. What we're learning here is there isn't just this struggle between good and bad. That's the illusion. Because if there's a good wolf, why do I need to feed it? If there's light and what is divine and true and everlasting, why do I have to feed it? Why doesn't it just consume the bad wolf? That's what the light does, right? So what that idea and what Rabbi Hillel was saying is that the question of which wolf do I feed indicates that somewhere in the mix of those opposites, there is a third party that must decide which wolf is not given the food. And in the understanding that I cannot continue being who I've been, then suddenly there is this growing awareness of what I am in that moment. And in that awareness of what I am is the good wolf, is that which must be fed. An awareness that only exists in the moment when, in quotes, the good wolf, the light can't change your consciousness by itself. If it could and you just said, I love the light, it'd be done. You'd be free. So you and I as human beings, as would-be souls, or simply put, as men and women who would like not to be a pox and a plague unto every person and predicament that we walk into, we have some responsibility in these moments where the bad wolf is going, me first, all I want is what I want. Get this right, then I'll be smiling. Then I'll be the good wolf. It doesn't work like that. What does work is this beginning of understanding that somehow or other, these two wolves, these two forces, these opposing forces, require that someone, something, be there when they appear, so that in our willingness to be present to this moment of yes and no, want and not want, will and won't, that in the moment where these suddenly appear, there is something in us that can say, yes, thy will be done. Yes, I accept the revelation. I accept the realization that there is a part of this wolf, I don't know anything about it, sits down there in its lair. It waits to the right moment so it can eat. And that explains why I turn into what I'm transformed into darkly in any unwanted moment. But by the grace of God, there is something that can see that. And it by itself seeing that can't change it. But when those two come together, they bring out of that moment of these forces a new light, a new understanding, a new awareness. So now there isn't me trying to tip the scale in favor of what I believe is good or to escape what is bad. Because that's what we are all the time, trying to measure and weigh whether or not this moment, how deep do I need to get into this? I don't want to get angry. I don't want to be negative. I want to be a nice person. And this mind, it just talks to itself all the time, doing what? Trying to reconcile the appearance of these opposing forces so that in the reconciliation that it chooses through its reaction, it can continue as it's been, someone who's decent or kind or who got through another moment. But what we're seeing is totally different than this. In order to feed, if you will, the good wolf, the bad wolf has to be starved. Can't feed the bad wolf and expect the good wolf to grow. Meaning that which is selfless, self-serving, that's what just thinks about itself, that which wants to not go out of its way whatsoever unless something highly beneficial is laid out for me to get or become. I'm not interested in starving that wolf. Not to mention, and this should be clear, I've tried starving the bad wolf. You and I know what it's like to be addicted, what it's like to be so selfish, and one day we say to ourselves, well, you know what, I can't be like that anymore. I can't keep eating these foods. I can't keep talking like this. I can't keep complaining. This ambition's killing me. I don't want to be that. But you can't lay it down. And so what happens is that we establish this idea of a good wolf, and it's an eternal struggle with the bad wolf. But the good wolf doesn't exist apart from what it doesn't want to go through. So they're not really separate wolves at all. They're one wolf divided up into yes and no, one wolf into good and bad, evil and light. We have to be present to the fact that in order for what is true in us to grow, we're going to have to, in quotes, take some of the food from the one wolf. Not try to kill it, not try to overcome it, but to recognize I can't possibly serve. What did St. Paul said? I don't do the good I would, I do the evil I would not. He was saying the same thing again. I don't want to feed this wolf. It's antithetical to the life of Christ. I'm not interested in feeding that. And yet that's what I do. First thing I do, I feed it. I think from it. I talk to myself about it. I do everything I can nonstop trying to ensure that this sense of myself as imagined goes on. So now what we're looking at, if you're following me, is this idea that there's never a moment where along comes a condition, and because of our conditioning of this consciousness, which is not just individual but collective, and it has all of these ideals and beliefs and opinions in them, I'm ripe ground for anything that comes in and runs into that consciousness, and that consciousness, the minute something challenges what it believes it is, what does it do? It goes, no. And when it says no, it comes up with its yes in order to ensure that it can go on. But that doesn't change anything, does it? What changes is the awareness at the same time that if I'm willing in the moment where up comes the habitual mechanical man, the sharp-tongued, facetious woman, you fill in the blanks. We all have all of these qualities in this unconscious nature. I have to be present enough. If not now, when? I don't know if you can make this leap with me. What does that mean? If not now, then when? And what is now? And I'm describing to you what now is. Now is the awareness of the wolves of the opposing forces at the same time. That's what now is, because it is through the opposing forces, it is through their appearance in this consciousness that suddenly I'm here in the present moment. That's what mindfulness is. Mindfulness isn't leaning left or leaning right. It's not loving Buddha or loving Christ or Muhammad or whatever one says to be mindful. Mindful is to be aware of everything that's in the mind, everything that's in the heart. And what's in the mind and what's in the heart cannot be separated from the forces that are moving and stirring that consciousness and those emotions. So it is in the full awareness of the entire stirring that at least it's evident to me, look, you know what? I can feel the impatience coming up. And I'm so sick and tired of trying to be a good person, to be nice. And yet I know without taking a single thought that I cannot be that man. I cannot be that woman. And I cannot be that man or woman because I have been that man or woman believing that if I just become him or her again, one day I won't have to be him or her. No, something else has to act. And what acts in these moments where I'm suddenly aware of that which is, if you want, the old, the dead, the conditioned, the mechanical, the corrupt, the self-serving, that which is aware of that level of consciousness does not belong by itself to that same level. Else I would never even see that level of consciousness, let alone have some question born about its nature by something that I didn't evoke and can't, that came in like a rescuing light to say, look, here's the wolf. You can't be just for yourself, because what are you if you're just for yourself? And this isn't an intellectual exercise that I'm describing. It is a dynamic experience of being in that place where I understand. If what is true and good and right and noble, if what is patient and properly encouraging, if it's going to grow as everyone in their right mind or heart would want it to, then it can't grow as long as I feed that which is growing at its expense. And so what I need to see is that something does want to take the food of the moment. It wants to take everything the moment brings to it and drag it down and put it in some bowl called Fido. And then it wants to eat its fill. And by eating its fill, I mean it wants to think through this, it wants to measure that, it wants to compare this, it wants to judge. It just wants the continuation of itself. But there's that which can see that. By itself, it cannot stop that. But in seeing that, there is suddenly a broader awareness of this dynamic dualism, of this divided nature. And in that, we can say, as does the lily, yes. Yes, I can't be like that anymore. God help me. No, I will not take that path that everyone takes in this moment, where everyone around me is laughing at these disgusting jokes, where everybody is drinking or drugging themselves, if not physically, socially, in order to fulfill themselves one more time, to eat what the wolf that wants to eat at all costs requires. Because that nature, it doesn't want to go through anything. That's what's so extraordinary about what I'm describing to you, is that every moment of our lives, we experience the nature of our consciousness. But the consciousness that we're presently living from doesn't want to relate the experience of the moment to itself, so it separates itself from what it's saying is causing the pain, and then it tries to figure out what to eat, who to fix, where to go in order to get rid of that suffering. And if I've done anything over the last 50 minutes, it's to try to make you present to the fact that this idea of yes and no, that's bad, I'm going to be like this, this is what good is, I'm going to deny that, all of that's got to go. What has to take place is another alternative altogether. And you have to experience it. I could talk about this for 1,000,000 years, it wouldn't change a thing. I have to become aware of this struggle. I can't just mechanically cave in to the conflict and then try to create some new life for myself downstream, because everything that I do mechanically ensures that this mechanical mind and heart will just wind on and on and on until it winds down and then I'm out of the body and nothing real has happened. No, there must be the awareness. The struggle is in the moment where I'm present to that which I see is what I think is what it means to be for me. And I can feel all that. And in the very perception of what it feels like to be me, to see that can't possibly be me. Because if that's all I am, then there's no place for anyone else or anything else, let alone the light of God, to come into this life and begin to bring about through that marriage the awareness of this struggle. It's also spelled out in so many different ways. One must lose their life to find it. Well, what life do I find if I lose my life? The life that I find is the new life that is born out of the awareness that this life that I've given myself to, it's taking me. It's taking my life. It's not giving me life. The kingdom of heaven is within. Within what? The awareness of it. That which doesn't have to try to figure out, to bring at least an end to the first portion of this talk. Can I get to a place where I understand that anything in me that is fighting or resisting or challenging and wishing it weren't like that and talking to itself, that anything that comes out of that consciousness will ensure that consciousness will meet another condition that sets it on fire. So that instead of this unconscious agreement to continue being who I've been, I'm aware of that nature that wants to continue being what it's been. I can feel it. I can see him. I can taste it. I know it wants to do the evil that I don't. I know it. It doesn't want to do the good. It hurts to do the good. And what is hurting? Have you had any moments yet where you understand that somehow, God help me, I have to put someone else before myself? I'm irritable, I'm tired, I'm whatever. How do I do that when there's all I want is to just be done with? That's all I want. The wolf just wants to eat. Then I understand what it means to feed one and starve the other. It's not for the sake of love. It's not for the sake of ego. It's not for the sake of Christ or any of that other nonsensical sentimentality connected to the worship of some icon. It's because I'm actually there in the moment, and I'm actually being crucified in the moment by my own agreement. I'm letting the wolf that always wants to eat, I'm letting it bark at me. I'm letting it scream at me. I'm watching it snarl. Those are the moments where what is negative in us and all of the reactions born out of resisting, that's when it's all pushing and growling and saying, feed me, give me, do this, get there, get over, do this. That's the moment where a person who, like the great-grandfather said, the one that wins is the one you feed. But to feed one, you must starve the other. And until you begin to see the necessity of starving this self, this image, this ego, till you start to see the necessity of starving it, you'll never know what it means to feed the good wolf. Because the good wolf grows the awareness and the fulfillment of another order of being that is already free and choiceless, doesn't have to think to itself, what does it do with this wolf? It's given the choice that it needs to make by the awareness that is born out of that relationship it's in that moment. It's given it. You see it. Now you may not go with that choice when you see the truth of something. And all the better in some respect, because then you see, well, wow, I didn't do the good I wanted to. I did the evil I don't want to do. That's phenomenal. How did that happen? And then you realize, all right, this consciousness, that's how it's predicated. That's how it moves. That's what it does. But now, because of my willingness, I understand something about this consciousness I never could have understood before. And I realize there's nothing wrong with being for myself. But if being for myself means that I'm set against everyone and everything else in the world, then that self that I'm for is a monster. So that this balance must be made, but I can't make the balance. That's the point. The balance exists within the relationship, and I must be there in that moment, if you will, to feed what is right and true, not by trying to become someone, but by coming to the end of who I've been in that same moment. Then I have a struggle, and there's no way I'll ever, no matter how long I'm able to continue speaking. Then I have a peace that passes understanding. Because I may not like what has to be done, and mostly I don't. But through the awareness that is granted in those moments, because one is no longer just this mechanical man or mechanical woman running along these mechanical tracks towards what it's attracted in order to escape the pain it's in. In that, your whole life, your real life opens up. I mean that quite literally. Because now you're no longer a captive of this kind of thinking or that kind of thinking. You're no longer a subject of your own immorality, and certainly not an instrument of this false morality that's always born out of trying to escape oneself. Instead, you're present to the whole of the possibility in the moment, and the possibility of the moment, like the lily in the field that toils not, is that the lily's being made new because it's saying no on one hand, but it's saying yes on the other. And at the same time, and allowing all that is unfolding within it to produce the next lily, the next radiant light from its white petals. You fill in the blanks. the complete end of the old struggle, and the beginning of a new struggle. But the new struggle has no useless suffering in it. The new struggle is not the continuation of who you imagine yourself to be in time. The new struggle is to die to who you've imagined yourself to be and enter into what is unimaginable because it is timeless in its nature. And you're a participant in that world instead of living below it and punished by one side or the other. The kingdom of heaven is within the awareness of it. And the awareness of the kingdom is the awareness of all the kingdoms at once. The greater contains the lesser, just as the branch is within the vine. Liberty is within you. It is a gift that you are given as long as you are willing to begin this process that I've been describing to you, by which you understand it can't be just this and it can't be just that, but it must be a marriage of this and that at once, and we must be present to it and allow that moment to present to our opening eyes, to our soul,